I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a special town meeting, May 9th, 2016. I'd like to begin by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to waive the reading of the notice of town meeting as published and posted. You know names there? State your name, please.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? I just have one comment on that. We do have the entire notice of the special town meeting available on each side of the room, if you didn't get that. And we also have the resolution in its entirety that we'll be referring to as well. All those in favor of the motion of waiving the reading of the notice of the town meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. The next order of business is to elect a moderator. Do I hear any nominations to act as moderator this evening? Nita Kincaid has been nominated. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, if we could have a motion to close nominations. Nick Mullane and Warren Spey. Any further discussion on closing the nominations? All those in favor of closing the nominations signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The nominations are closed. All those in favor of Nita Kincaid acting as moderator signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, I think. Thank you, Sean. Mike. Since the selectmen, pursuant to Section 7-7 for the Connecticut General Statutes, have submitted the resolution to be presented under Item 1 of the notice to referendum vote, after the introduction of and reasonable discussion on the resolution, this meeting will be adjourned to a referendum vote. At this point, I'd like to ask the Assistant Town Clerk, Cheryl Consavage, did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you, to read the first paragraph of the resolution.
Resolution of the Town of North Stonington appropriating $38,550,000 for the design, construction, equipping, and furnishing of a new Wheeler Middle High School addition and renovation to the gymatorium, and an addition and renovations to the North Stonington Elementary School, demolition of portions of the existing Wheeler Middle and High School, and other improvements to be used for the North Stonington Board of Education Central Office, and authorizing the town to issue bonds or notes and temporary notes to finance the portion of such appropriation not defrayed from grants.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'd like to entertain a motion to move that the reading of the entire resolution to be presented to this special town meeting under Item 1 of the notice be waived, and that the full text of the resolution be incorporated into the minutes of this meeting. Did someone so move? Do you have could you say your name? Bruce Smith? Thank you. And a second? Thank you. Okay. And I think from here, I'm going to turn it back to First Selectman.
Go ahead and take
Oh, right. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. And now I'm going to turn it back to First Selectman Sean Murphy.
Just a few comments before we have a presentation this evening. I'd like to note to everyone that the need for a school building project has been going on for some time. The need was first recognized 10 or 12 years ago, and where we started having facility studies. We had a Castle Booze architect did a presentation. As you know, it had been to referendum on 2 previous occasions not that long ago. Each time that it comes forward, it's pretty much the same things that need to be accomplished to our schools. The only thing different this time is we've built upon those requirements because of different code, changes in code and so forth. But each time that we delay doing a project, the cost goes up. If we would have done the project that was defeated last, that would cost us in today's dollars millions more than what we are proposing at this time. The committee has worked long and hard. They've been meeting weekly for months and months, and they have made, you'll see their recommendation that they presented to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and I'm sorry, I should start with the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance has recommended this project, and that's why we're here today to discuss it, ask any questions we might have, and as you know, we'll be taking it to a referendum next Monday. I'd like to thank the committee members that have worked on this for some time. They put a lot of, besides their weekly meetings, there was subcommittees and so forth working on this. They have entertained a number of questions throughout the different meetings and gotten answers for our townspeople, and I really applaud the efforts that they have done. And with that said, I would like to introduce Mike Ergo, who is the chairman of the ad hoc school building committee for the modernization of our schools.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I would just like to start out by just quickly recognizing the committee, just so everybody can put a face to the names of the people that have been working so hard on this proposal before us tonight. And as I call my committee's names, if you could just remain standing. My vice chair, Jay Peterson, Pam Patemry, Mike Anderson, student Tyler DeBrino, Dan Spring, Walt Mathwich, might be away traveling for work, Mike Osborne. These people have worked very hard. Can we give them a big round of applause? Thank you. I'd also like to ask if there's any committee members from the last ad hoc committee here, if you could stand. I don't know if anyone's here from that last committee. Okay. Well, they contributed heavily to this as well. We kind of built on a lot of what they did for this presentation that you're going to see tonight. So what has happened to get us to this point? We have had many public hearings, many meetings. As Sean alluded to, we've been meeting every Monday. We've taken input, we've taken feedback, and what you're going to see tonight is kind of a culmination of that. So without further ado, The objectives of the ad hoc building committee were to conduct studies relating to the needs of the respective school facilities and methods of construction, financing and related matters required to meet those needs. The tri-board directed us further to improve the science classrooms, the labs, relocation of the elementary office to the front of the school, and to fix all fire, health, and code situations with the school. Just a few steps, and there's been a lot that the ad hoc school building committee have taken to this point. We've been meeting on Mondays. When we started the work on this, we tried to say, how can we figured last time it was likely it didn't pass because it was too expensive. That's where we figured we had to start. So how can we bring the cost down? And we started looking at demolishing fewer walls, maintaining existing plumbing and infrastructure where needed. So we weighed a number of different options for renovation. We ultimately decided on pre-K through 6 configuration here at the elementary school. It fiscally made sense. It's about 10% more in reimbursement by bringing and keeping the 6th grade here for another year. So currently 6th grade does go across the street. We performed strategic hazmat testing, environmental testing, to get a better sense of what those costs would be. Last time around, they'd only tested at the high school, middle school area. We did testing here at the elementary school so we could better estimate those costs. In order to maximize state reimbursement at both schools, we elected to do a renovate as new project here at the elementary school and an alterations and additions project at the Wheeler Middle High School, which we'll present to you in a few. We met with State of Connecticut grant staff and kind of passed the idea by them. We discussed the deed restrictions on the property across the street with the Wheeler Library and have their support moving the project forward in the way that best serves the students in the community. We met with school administrators and faculty to review program needs and concept designs. So we met with all the staff to make sure what we're doing makes sense educationally. We formed work groups that did further exploration on the financial end of things, the use of the middle high school across the street, as you'll see in the plans, and communications to try to do a better job of communicating with the public. And we reviewed alternative construction methods to help with future cost savings when the project does ultimately move forward. Just to summarize some of the educational upgrades that you'll see with this project, we'll be renovating all the classrooms here at this school for a pre-K through 6 configuration. The technology will be upgraded throughout the schools beyond what was just upgraded through the grant that Mr. Nero had secured, so there'll be more technology upgrades. All programs will be available at the first level of the elementary school. So things like computer and art and all the things like that. So the little ones don't have to go upstairs. They'll all be available on the first level here. Space for meetings and storage at all the schools. This will be updated biology, chemistry, and physics labs, which we talked about, 70-year-old labs over at the high school right now. New space for the Wheeler cafeteria and a new chorus room and updated band room. Maintenance and energy, when you have old buildings, we have a lot of inefficiencies. So what we will look to fix with this plan, replacing all windows, improving the building envelope, insulation. Building will meet fire, building, disability, health, and energy codes. So we'll have accessibility for disabled. Updating buildings to meet state standards for acoustic and natural lighting. Again, older buildings, the state standards have come a long way. The buildings don't meet the current codes for that. Update buildings to meet state standards for indoor air quality. So we don't have the proper ventilation in the buildings is what that means. So we're gonna fix that with this. All these things will automatically be updated. We'll fix and replace the roofs. Title IX and code upgrades at the gymatorium, so there'll be equal space for girls and boys, which is not the case at the gymatorium right now. And we'll update the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems where necessary. Safety. Asbestos, lead, PCB removal in all buildings. We have some issues here. We've done testing. There are things in these buildings that we don't want in the buildings. So we're going to have those fixed with this plan. Discontinue the use of the multi-purpose room for physical education here at the elementary school. We will have a proper gym for this school. The flooring that you're seeing right here is not flooring that elementary school kids should be playing sports on. Move the computer room again to the first floor. for safety for here at the elementary school, relocation of our main office to the front of the school. Currently, they have to go around the corner here to get to the main office. The main office for the elementary school will be right here at the front. And discontinue use or modification of the tunnel under Route 2. So we'll talk more in detail about that, but currently the kids are having to go under that tunnel, as many of you might be aware, for sports over to the gymatorium. I want to talk a little bit about the construction approaches that have been discussed for the project. So a lot of different things were, and this, what I'm talking about right here are only what our committee has gone over. There was a whole other committee before ours that went over a lot of different options, and I remember seeing some of those presentations. But our committee looked at some things like renovation of the middle high school at the current location. So again, you're going to see a proposal, as you've seen on the walls here, of that we're building a new middle high school. Because when we looked at renovating the existing middle high school, it was going to take nearly 4 years to complete when it was done. Phasing would have been kind of a nightmare, and it actually cost more. We talked about switching the schools for better space utilization. So maybe send the elementary school kids across the street, bring the high schoolers over here. Again, the phasing would have been very complicated, and it costs more. It costs more than what we're proposing here. The piecemeal approach. So let's just do what we have to. You know, again, we talked about this when we started as a committee. We want to keep the cost down because probably last time it failed because it was too expensive. So what do we just have to do? Like, no extras, just what do we have to do? The piecemeal approach. I'll get onto that onto the next slide. Renovation of one school first, then another one years later. So maybe do the project separately. And it's difficult to estimate the costs of this project like this because reimbursement rates would change, interest rates would change. But really, we estimated that to be several million more over time using the approach, and our reimbursement rate would likely be lower over time. So reimbursement rates change every year, and those aren't guaranteed. Excuse me. Send our high school students to other schools. So the Board of Education reaffirmed their unanimous support for keeping all the students K through 12 here, and basically current and prior year discussions of sending students elsewhere have indicated little savings, possibly more money per pupil when busing and other associated expenses are considered. Children may not be able to participate in extracurricular activities due to long commutes if they were sent to neighboring districts, and our community would not have oversight of our students or the curriculum, nor the control of rising tuition rates. We didn't spend a lot of time on this one because this wasn't a directive as a committee. We did look very slightly at what the cost of, say, a K through 8 building would be, and it actually costs very similar to what we're proposing right now with a K through 12. So again, another option that was looked at. And doing nothing at all, it's the one option that really we didn't feel was an option at all. We have serious issues here at the schools that need to be addressed, and if we're going to keep our kids here, we have to address these things. So as I alluded to the capital improvements approach, this is the piecemeal approach that I was talking about. So this is the approach that let's just fix what we need to do, and nothing more. You know, we understand costs are tough. None of us want to see our taxes go up. But as you can see here, when I go down the list, we have hazmat remediation and replacement at all schools at a gross of $13.9 million. That's taking the hazardous materials out of the schools. Indoor air quality, ventilation, and air conditioning. So we're talking about having the proper air quality in the schools that the kids and the teachers and the faculty should have. Fixing that, it's $8.9 million. Roof replacements. The roofs are over 20 years old now, and they will need to be replaced. So that's something we'd have to look at $3.2 million. Fire suppression, sprinklers in schools. Our schools aren't sprinkled. We feel like that's something that we'd want to do bare minimum to fix as well. So that's $2 million. Security, this Route 2 connector and location of the office. So that's fixed, dealing with the tunnel and the office here over at the elementary school, and that would be $2.5 million. Updating code and ADA deficiencies. So in other words, making accessibility for our disabled students. $5.2 million. And then existing the science labs as directed by the tri-board. It's something that our science labs are 70 years old. We can't teach certain things in our science labs because they're so old, and that's $2.3 million. That's kitchen staying the same, no site work, no buildings additions or demolition. The total net cost of that, the total cost is $38 million. The net cost is $27.9 million. You're going to see a proposal for a project that's millions less than this, and it actually gives us state-of-the-art facilities. So you can see why our committee would say, let's kind of go in this direction. But just so you know, this is something that we did look at. Just to kind of give you an overview, Selectman Murphy alluded to this before. We did look at 2 different projects in 2014, and the first time we came to referendum, we were coming with a project that ended up the cost to the town was $30.62 million after the space standard waivers, and I'll get into those as well. The cost to the town in June 2014, when we came back just a couple of months later, was $25.12 million. And the proposed project this time around with the space standard waivers, $21.68 million. So what we've managed to do as a committee, which I'm proud of, is that we came back with something that's less expensive than last time. And if anyone was paying attention at the last town meeting that we had for the school, we were told if you wait, it's probably going to go up 10% per year. We delivered a project here that's actually less. Now, with that being said, there is less scope of this project. The last project had things like a cafe. We had another gym that we were going to have on the building over here. We were doing other things that we're not doing with this project. So I don't want you to think it's the same project. It's a different project, and we did have to sacrifice some things, but we've delivered something with less cost. So this leads us to the approach that makes the most sense educationally and fiscally for our town, as recommended by the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, and the Modernization Committee. So everybody's looked at these, and we feel like this is what makes the most sense. I'd like to ask one of my committee members, who's the Director of Pupil Personnel and Special Education in Avon, Connecticut, to come up and actually lead us through the building and what it means for us as a town with the building that we're going to construct. So Pam Patemry, if you'd come up and guide us through that.
Good evening. I was asked to be on the committee and to look at this from a purely educational standpoint. And to give you a little bit of my background, I am the Director of Pupil Services for Avon Public Schools. And a lot of people don't know what the Pupil Personnel Director does, but basically my jobs and responsibilities are to ensure compliance for the district with regard to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is the ADA that we were speaking of. I oversee school nurses with regard to medically fragile students, and just really ensuring compliance to all the regulations that are coming our way from a federal level and from a state level. In being on the committee, there were a few things that really I was looking for, and certainly accessibility for all students was one, and looking at our buildings and the facilities related to how easily accessible were programs for students with disabilities, but also for all students. What was the shape and the status of the facilities? I'm new to the committee, and I'm fairly new to North Stonington. But I do believe that the facilities are key in the educational system, regardless of how many children you have in the system or the status of the children in the system. So from an educational standpoint, I wanted to walk you through some of the considerations with regard to some of the new pieces of legislation that have come down and the mandates from the state. The very first thing when I was on the committee and looking at all of the issues that were at hand was safety. Naturally, we think about keeping our students safe, and the first thing that struck me was definitely the tunnel and going from one side of the road to the other. And it was interesting because in my work, I converse obviously with a lot of other educators, and it was surprising to me that people up toward Hartford were very well aware of our tunnel and some of the concerns, and the comment was, you still have that tunnel? And given what we know about school safety, and maybe I know too much from going through some of the safety trainings that we have to go through that are mandatory, it was a concern of mine, and it is a concern of mine that the tunnel is still in play. So one of the biggest factors for me was ensuring that the school building was actually moved to the other side of the road so we could take that issue right off the table. The other issue related to the building physically being moved to the other side of the road is going back to accessibility. So right now, students with disabilities are segregated and separate from their peers in a lot of ways, but the one thing that students with disabilities have to go through in order to access the school buildings and facilities on this side of the road is they literally have to be bused from one side of the street to the other side. So it limits their accessibility. So that, certainly from being inclusive and least restrictive, that certainly was a concern of mine. So that's something that we addressed in this new plan. The next was looking at our early childhood standards. So with the new standards that have come from, certainly we all know about Common Core, but people are not as familiar with the early childhood learning standards. And in the early childhood learning standards, they talk about space requirements. And they talk about different materials that are developmentally appropriate for that age and range of students, and also, again, accessibility to the facilities overall. So one of the things that we looked at is in this area right here, anywhere in purple, you have your pre-K classrooms, your K classrooms, and your first grade, so all of that early learning grade level, and it's all accessible to the first floor facilities. We also looked at individual spaces for special education for things like occupational therapy, physical therapy, making sure that there was adequate space for those services to happen. And on the second floor, again, looking at what's developmentally appropriate for elementary school-age children, making sure that our grades, second and third and fourth, and then fifth and sixth in the other wing. So again, making sure that developmentally appropriate space was in play. Also, again, special education facilities accessible on each level. Moving to the middle high school, the first thing that we looked at was making sure that, again, what's developmentally appropriate on the first floor, you have your 7th and 8th grades. And if you look at the configuration of 7th and 8th grade, it's more interdisciplinary, so that you have the flexibility to do cross-grade groupings. So you talk about differentiated instruction and making sure that you have accessibility to varied levels of classes, so that is happening there. But at the high school level, you're looking more departmentalized. So again, looking at the science classes, it's a large enough space, it's all within proximity, so there's flexibility depending on scheduling needs, depending on course offerings to have that. And then again, looking departmentally, you have your language, English, social studies, and math, all departmentalized within this wing.
Thank you, Pam. So now we get to the costs. I will mention one more thing before I go over the cost, and that is we did, like I said, look at everything try to look at it from a cost-saving point of view. And one of the things on the elementary school that you may have noticed if you've been at any of the other meetings is that we are looking at doing a centralized kitchen. What that's going to mean is we will serve both buildings. Food will be prepared at one building for both buildings. That's so we don't have to build another kitchen. It's very common at many schools, and our contract with our food service will take care of making sure that that's able to happen. And you'll see there's also a multi-purpose room separate, so we'll be able to have Jim in here more regularly. Right now it's a bit of a scheduling conflict, but sometimes if you ever walk in here, you see gym, lunch, band going on up here, so the scheduling should all be able to be worked out nice and easily with the configuration. So the costs. As I said, from last time, we have come down on costs, so we're proud of that fact as well. One of the things we did was we did just have new enrollment numbers that came out. And actually, we've been meeting, like I said, for quite a few months here, since September as a committee. We did take the new enrollment numbers that came out to configure these numbers so they're up to date with those enrollment numbers as it relates to reimbursement from the state. So if I could start and just explain the fact that the total project cost with the financing costs is $38,550,000. The estimated state reimbursement is around $15,060,000. The cost to the town of North Stonington would be $23,490,000. And the cost to the town of North Stony with a 100% space standard waiver is estimated at $21,680,000. So let me kind of explain some of this a little bit more. What is a space standard waiver? We talked about this last time, and it took me a while to understand it last time, so I know some of us might not be familiar with it. A space standard waiver is a waiver that the state will grant in order to allow you to exceed the maximum space standards and, in essence, get full reimbursement for your project without meeting the square footage requirements of the state. North Stonington's a good candidate to receive this waiver because we have a smaller school, yet we still have to have the program requirements just as the larger schools do, and it makes it difficult for us to build a smaller school in that way. So in other words, even though our school's smaller, we still have to have art, we still have to have computers, we still have to have all these programs, but we don't need quite as much space. So they will, in essence, potentially grant us this space standard waiver so we can build a larger school and we get the full reimbursement from the state. Now, it's not guaranteed. It's 100% state space standard waiver is not a guaranteed thing, but we would be a good candidate for it, and really it's the type of thing that was made for schools like ours. If the waiver's received, we should receive up to the full 46.07% of reimbursement on both buildings on eligible costs and space. Speaking of space, speaking of state reimbursement, so there's no really known history of reimbursement being denied. That's a question that comes up quite often. What if the state doesn't give us the reimbursement? So in order to alleviate those concerns, what you'll see in the paperwork, if you were to read it, is that the Board of Selectmen at the Board of Finance's request actually put in language that was adopted that stipulates that we cannot move forward with this project with the exception of $1.59 million for initial costs until such time that written grant commitment is received from the state of Connecticut. Written grant receipt is generally sometime around June or July, so that would be like next year we'd find that out. So what it means is the risk has been mitigated. It's in the language, so we're not going to move anything forward except that $1.59 million. So when you vote, you're voting on a project that will get state reimbursement. If it doesn't get reimbursement, it doesn't move forward. The ballot question appears up here. I'm not going to read it. It is in your packet. And again, the ballot question is only one part of the entire resolution, which you also have copies of, but this is what you'll be voting on when you go into the ballot box. So talking about costs, what does mill rate mean to me? So, based on some feedback from the Board of Finance a couple of meetings ago, looking at just this project, so I want to be clear in these estimates here. This doesn't take into account any other potential things that are happening, whether it's costs to the town or revenue to the town. This is just this project that I'm talking about here. If we were to have to borrow the $23.49 million for 20 years, a mill rate increase would be about 3.03 mils. And if we were to get the space standard waiver, that same term would be 2.8 mil increase. Now that's calculated using a USDA loan of 2.85%, 2.875%. That is what the rate is right now on a USDA loan, United States Department of Agriculture. They lend to rural communities like ours. We've talked to them. They're very interested in doing a loan for us. We haven't applied yet. We can't apply until this actually were to pass. So the minute that happens, we have the application, we're ready to apply, and rates for the USDA don't change until June. So we have time to get that interest rate still. This is also subject to change based on Board of Ed, Board of Selectmen, feedback, interest rates, grand list, and revenue changes. This is an idea of what it should be based on what we know on this project right now. So let's break that down to what is it going to cost for a homeowner. Now, based on these mill rates and this calculation, based on this project alone, the average house assessment in North Stonington is $174,293. That's the average house assessment. Based on that assessment, The tax increase would be about $45 a month without the space standard waiver, about $42 a month with the space standard waiver. So everybody's assessments are different. This is certainly a broad brush, but just to give people an idea of what the costs would be, that is an estimate. Now, if you want to know exactly what it's going to cost you, the town website very handily has this calculator right on the website, which you can go and plug in the mill rate based on what the mill rate you want to plug in, and you can put on your assessed property value and it'll calculate your tax for you. So certainly you can go right to the town website and figure that out for yourself at your leisure. So the cost benefits of proceeding now, I think Sean alluded to it in his opening comments, but protection from continuing escalated construction costs is definitely one. Construction costs are not coming down. Reimbursement is at 46.07% on eligible costs, and interest rates are historically low still at 2.875%. So this is just an overview of the schools again, and just to kind of review this quickly, elementary school, this is going to be the new centralized kitchen that's built. Part of that is the kitchen, part of that is the multi-purpose room. Right here you have the new Wheeler Middle High School that will be built, and the gymatorium, which will be renovated as well, including new roof. And over here you have the middle school wing, which is going to be demolished because our research has shown that it's too far gone to actually repair or be of use. And we did have other people in there that we thought about maybe they'd want to be tenants or something like that, and nobody's interested in it. It's going to come down, and the cost for demolishing it is included in these estimates as well for that. And then central office, which is the superintendent's office and other offices, will be located over here. And we will have the media, there's a nice media center there, which would be potentially available for town meetings and things of that nature, which we don't really have a great meeting space for our regular meetings in this community. So all buildings will be consolidated at one side of Route 2 for safety. All buildings and infrastructure will be updated to meet health, safety, and fire codes. All buildings will have air quality, lighting, and acoustic standards updated to meet state standards. All hazmat will be remediated. There'll be energy efficient buildings, all high energy efficiency buildings. The new science labs and instructional classrooms will be built, and educational needs addressed on the academic building additions as well. And at the elementary school, all the same stuff, health, fire, air quality, acoustics, all this stuff that needs to be repaired will be fixed and brought up to state standards. Hazmat will be remediated. Energy efficiency will be optimized. And the central kitchen and dedicated cafeteria multi-purpose room will happen. And we will also be replacing the roof at the Board of Education space for the central office as indicated right here. That about sums up the presentation.